Now it's time for Office Hours with Dr. Ken Rucci.
All right, welcome to Office Hours with Dr. Ken Rucci. This is episode 102. And on today's session, we want to spend time talking about cybersecurity in the age of AI and what do businesses need to know. And we're going to walk through some of the things that are of concern if you are talking about or thinking about bringing AI into your business or into your enterprise. And we are starting to see AI become more and more part of the conversation. We really can't have a technology conversation without thinking about how do we address AI? What are some of the data protections or some of the things that we need to think about as we evaluate this new technology? But first, I want to talk about AI, and really is a two sides of a coin. One of them being that AI has definitely helped cybersecurity improve, and we can operate much faster. And some of the things that AI has helped when we look at cybersecurity is, one, definitely helped with increasing threat protection and prevention. That is one of the benefits of AI, is that it can analyze vast amounts of data in real time, and we can use AI to identify things like unusual logins from unfamiliar places. We can also use AI to look for and identify abnormal network traffic. These are things that we may not have been able to find quickly because all this data exists in logs and audit trails that we would have to normally go through. So by implementing AI into these situations, it makes it a lot easier to be able to pull that information out. We also are able to respond faster to incidents with AI tools that add automation. We can look at things like identify a malicious attack. We can use AI to run a playbook that will be able to block an address or bubble up an alert quickly for the security team to be able to take action on. And we also look at AI to be able to add predictive capabilities. So not only can we respond faster, but we can use AI models to predict future threats using historical data. So by looking at these trends, AI and the various models are able to forecast future potential attacks or identify areas of weakness that we might need to increase security controls or put some more emphasis on by monitoring, particularly things like network traffic and identifying vulnerabilities. And I think the biggest one when we talk about AI and what it brings to cybersecurity is the ability to reduce human workload. Anybody that's worked in cybersecurity knows that there's no shortage of data, there's no shortage of logs and alerts that we look for and we're constantly presented with. But by using AI, we can use AI to comb through those logs and filter out a lot of the noise and get us to the relevant alerts and data that we are able to take action on. And this also allows our workforce or our cybersecurity engineers to not be so reactive and allow them to be more proactive, focusing more on the strategy or thinking about how we can increase our security posture by possibly bringing in new tools. So that's one side of the coin. That's talking about the benefits that AI has brought to cybersecurity. On the other side, we also know that because of these benefits and a lot of the things that I just talked about from the cyber side, the cyber criminals are also taking advantage of these benefits. And the first one is using it to create very sophisticated social engineering attacks. And we've seen a significant spike in social engineering because it's easy, it's low cost. We can send out lots of emails, little to no cost. But we can make these emails seem more realistic by using AI and using AI to gather information about what should be in that email to make it look more realistic and increase the likelihood that someone will click on it. The other thing that AI is also doing is helping bring in things like deep fakes. So we can create messages that maybe come from a trusted person like the CEO, and we can create a deep fake and embed that video and ask the user then to authorize a transaction or take a particular action. Using the CEO's voice makes it much more realistic and increases the likelihood that someone will click on it and make that attack be more successful. We also see AI being used to create intelligent malware. So AI helps up the stakes in malware because we can design or code into that piece of malware ways that it can invade or evade detection in real time. And these AI powered features allow it to change their code and their behavior and even modify the delivery mechanism so that they are less likely to be detected. And then finally, cybercriminals, because we know that AI is becoming more and more part of an enterprise or a business's strategy, there's also the tactic of poisoning AI data. And basically we know that we train data, we train a model based on information that the organization supplies. This information then is used to create a chatbot to answer questions, to increase customer service or help work with constituents. And cybercriminals know that if they can poison that or alter the data that's in that model, they can steer a model to answer a question the way that they want, or they can tamper the model so that it would intentionally misidentify threats or overlook vulnerabilities. So we're seeing a lot of these things take place, and as we bring AI into our infrastructure, we have to keep in mind that there's two sides to this. There's definitely benefits that AI is bringing to cybersecurity, but at the same time, the cyber criminals are taking advantage of those same benefits. So we have to factor in this dual role and be able to understand that AI is not replacing that human oversight. We still need to have a human in the loop to be able to identify and pick up on these errors or these missed nuances or biases that may arise if your data has been tampered with, and also use it to monitor and oversight on what the AI model is doing. It's not intended to replace humans entirely. And we also have an ethical component to this, that as we bring AI into more use cases and understand the benefits, but we have to make sure that we are using it ethically, and that model or that AI information is not introducing bias or swaying things one way or another. And a lot of this depends on understanding the data that's being used to change it. And then finally, we just have to keep an eye on how fast AI and how it's being innovated in business. Both defenders and attackers are ramping up rapidly the way that they use this. So as we start to use this cutting edge technology, we need to continually understand what it's doing, and then also fortify and update our balance, our defenses. So we have to come up with this balance of being able to understand and critically evaluate what we're doing with AI. It definitely adds benefits, definitely enhances and eases our workload. But as I mentioned before, it also introduces things that we need to really think about. So let's talk about the impact on businesses. And the impact on businesses are very similar to a traditional, I'll say traditional cyber attack. But it's helpful to review that cyber attacks can have massive consequences for a business, and things to keep in mind are there can be a financial component. That could be ransomware. So cyber criminals can use AI to harvest information or look for businesses and use that information to target a particularly attractive business. And then the ransomware can be anywhere from $1,000 to millions of dollars. On top of that, there also is the concern about how much it would cost to recover. So bringing in forensic investigators or restoring data or maybe even having to rebuild a system from scratch is something that we'd have to keep in mind. And then the last component of this from a financial perspective is that there could be regulatory fines. If you're a business like a healthcare organization that has to abide by HIPAA, you have data protection controls that need to be in place, regulations that need to be considered, and any of these things could cause a violation that may impose a penalty that we'd also have to add to the cost from recovering from a cybersecurity incident. In addition to financial, there's also the reputational damage, right? These are things that can cause a public backlash, right? No one wants to be in the paper. No one wants to read about themselves. We could also have significant customer churn. People may not feel that your business is trustworthy, so they're going to just move on to the next person. And also, it could impact your business from a loss of partnerships, or suppliers may decide that they don't want to do business with you anymore because they don't feel that your cybersecurity posture is where it needs to be. And then we also have legal compliance risks. If you do suffer a cybersecurity attack, there is, depending on what state you live in, there are breach notification laws. You may have to send out emails to everybody that's been affected, or provide a year of credit monitoring as part of the notification. So these are things that need to take into account. But then finally, there is the physiological or the human impact of employee burnout, of having to go through a cybersecurity attack, ensuring that it doesn't happen again, going back and doing a look to see what are some of the things that we did or we didn't do that we need to improve. So these are considerations to keep in mind, that cybersecurity is vital to understanding how you're going to respond and be prepared. And I think one of the things that's important is address these things before you do anything. Cybersecurity should be an ongoing thought, and it should be built into the culture of the employees so that they understand the risks and also the benefits that can come from using AI. So let's talk a little bit about some of the steps that you can do to help mitigate some of these AI threats that I just went over. If you are considering introducing an application or identifying a use case that you can apply to an AI solution, first off, make sure that you educate your employees, that they understand what AI is doing. It's not a magic bullet. It's not going to fix everything. Understanding that an AI model is using data and information or resources that are part of your business, that also needs to be protected, just like any other credit card numbers or patient information. Employees need to understand that that data, if it's not used properly, could get outside of an organization. It could be used to train a public large language model. So the same risks that you would have of attaching a file in an email, that same concern is there from using an AI, a large language learning tool. So employee education is really important and should be part of the evaluation of how we want to implement. The other thing that you would want to talk about or understand is conducting regular security audits, right? So just as part of a routine procedure, an organization will check to make sure that we have our vulnerabilities patched, all the applications are up to date. We may have a pen testing exercise on a quarterly basis or yearly, whatever you have put into place. But that AI model or that AI should be part of that security audit. We should incorporate looking at what data is being used, what applications, what employees have access to it. And then also identify how would you recover, or what would a typical attack be? How do we protect the modeling, the data, so we don't have an AI poisoning situation? So there should be controls in place to protect that. And that should also be built into your roadmap. This isn't a one and done type situation. We should be able to identify gaps just like we have with any other tool, but AI should be part of that. How is the application being updated? Do we monitor the security controls? Have we introduced maybe new data that's going to be used to train the model? These should all be part of your regular security audit and be factored into your testing procedure. One other area that businesses should think about when they want to implement AI is a zero trust security model. And there's been a lot of talk, and maybe on another episode we'll dive more into what zero trust means. But there's some critical components or key things to think about from zero trust. One is the cybersecurity model of least privilege. So least privilege means that I want to restrict access to the data and the systems that someone needs to do their role. So we don't want to give them more access. We don't want to give them more permissions than they need. Because if we think about the scope of how an AI model works, it's actually looking for its information. It's trying to put the response together based on what the employees have access to. So by limiting down the scope of what a person has, that also then provides that security so that the AI isn't going to be able to factor into its response information that it shouldn't have. Okay, so one of the fundamental things that we talk about when we're looking at implementing AI is looking at your data and what do employees have. And this isn't a new AI issue. It gets accelerated because AIs can operate much faster and are looking in the purview of what the person has. So this zero trust helps lock things down and making sure that as something is looking to figure out how to respond, it's looking appropriately and having access to the things that it needs. One of the other things that businesses should consider is also just staying up to date on threat intelligence. And this isn't having to have briefings weekly on attacks and new information or news, but it's just being able to understand that this is a rapidly evolving landscape and new AI models and new applications are coming online all the time. And also working with your peer network or cybersecurity organizations that you may associate with that they can provide information that you can look at and share. And then doesn't necessarily apply just because of AI, but make sure that you have your system backed up and you've tested those backups, and you have a way to make sure that if something does happen, you can get that quickly. So whether that's stored in a data center or those backups are available in the cloud, make sure that if they're encrypted, and then more importantly, go through that test of just because we have it backed up, can we actually restore? So if you are the victim of an attack and you have all of your data or your workstations are encrypted through a ransomware attack, you have a way in that you can feel confident that I can bring everything back, and we've tested that. The last thing you want to have happen is the worst thing, our whole system goes down, and then we go to bring the backups online and we haven't tested them, or they're not available, or something else happens. Also, one other thing to look at is monitor your AI training data. So as you build your chatbot or you build your application to provide answers, make sure that you've also are testing the integrity of that data, making sure that the scope, the information isn't being included that it shouldn't. And this goes back to evaluating your data and making sure that as the AI model is working to respond, it's looking at the correct things and it's not looking in places where it shouldn't. So that's part of that monitoring for the integrity, and also inconsistencies, or if data has changed. If all of a sudden your responses aren't the same as they were before, we should be able to get an alert on that or monitor that situation. And then also another thing to think about is being able to have a secure security posture. So are you using a security operations center? Are you outsourcing your alerts? Depending if you're a small business where you may not have the staff to have someone dedicated to cybersecurity full time, there are MSPs or MSSPs that can come in to help monitor those situations to ensure that your organization is up to date from a vulnerability standpoint or from a patching standpoint. All right. And then finally, I think the most critical thing is just fostering that security first culture. Right? We are moving more and more of our infrastructure, our applications to the cloud. And the attacks are becoming faster and more sophisticated. Like I talked about in the beginning, using AI, that phishing emails are getting harder to detect. So training your employees to be diligent, building cybersecurity awareness into your onboarding, and also recognizing employees that are doing good security practices. Make a way to reward that, so it's something that people want to feel good about and they want to participate in. And then also on an ongoing basis, provide updates and reminders about security protocols and what's new and what their role is in the organization. Thank you. That's everything we wanted to cover. I know we talked about a lot here in this episode 102, but I think it's a good start for businesses to think about what do we need to do if we want to bring in AI. And I don't think it's a matter of if you're going to. We're seeing AI become more and more part of a regular business structure, and the applications are getting more advances, and we're seeing more use cases identified for them to make sense. Maybe some of these things we will dive into on a future episode, but thank you, and I appreciate your time today, and I'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.